Good morning, everybody. It is Easter Monday, and I am going to record this Easter Sunday sermon, and I'm going to do it while I'm making some breakfast. It is roughly 11:05 here in the Bay Area, California. I'm starving, so I'm going to start off with some coffee, and then we're going to take it from there. So, one Sunday morning, way back when I was still part of a Southern Baptist church, I was standing outside talking to one of our deacons, and this young woman comes up to us. She was probably about my age at the time. And she said to us, "Hey, I need some help. I think I'm in a domestic violence situation and I need to get away from my boyfriend." So the deacon immediately offers to call the police. I stopped him because this church was located in Oakland. For those of you who don't know very much about Oakland, California, let's just say that the response time for domestic violence cases is not very good, let alone if something is not actively happening. So she needed help right away. And I walked her to my car and I took her to the nearest BART station, which was about 10 minutes away. So when I got back, said deacon was not happy with me. What he said was, "Why did you do that? That was really dangerous. You could have gotten hurt. You don't know what this woman's boyfriend looks like. You don't know if he has a weapon. I wouldn't have helped her that way." Now, this is a man who was 20 years my senior telling me I would not have helped her that way. And what I told him was, I felt drawn to do this. This is a thing that I knew I had the power to fix. It's a little bit of power, but I'm going to use it the best of my ability to help somebody else. I know it was dangerous. I didn't know if we were going to get hurt, if we were going to get seen, whatever. We both could have ended up dead, let's be honest. But I did it anyway. Easter Sunday, we talk about the resurrection of Christ, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the role that the disciples played. Not the 12 that we normally think of, but the two, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, to be precise. And we're also going to talk about why they were there in the first place, because you can't understand what they did or why they were there without understanding where they were 3 days before that. So 3 days prior, these women were watching Jesus be crucified. They were basically being ignored by the Roman state because women were basically property or, domestic help. Not very important. Meanwhile, the men were being pegged as insurgents. They were being watched. That's why they ran. The women were being ignored, so they got to see everything from beginning to end. And that's an important detail. They even got to see where Jesus was buried, where the tomb was. So they had a lot more information. Also, think about being a witness to something like that. Imagine seeing someone killed by ICE. Imagine seeing the police brutally beat a protester. You are a witness, but if the powers that be see you or notice you, then you're in danger too. To be able to stay and watch the whole thing and be a witness to the whole thing, that takes a lot of courage. And that's what these women did. Now, that doesn't mean that they were any less worried about the consequences. They knew they could go to jail. They knew they could be beaten. They knew they could be executed by the state without a problem. They did it anyway, even though there was no obvious reward. We rely on our faith to get us through the most difficult times. But when we don't know what's going to happen next, that makes things even more complicated. I have a dirty spoon. That's kind of gross. But even if we don't know what we're doing, The act of faith can move us forward into the unknown. And faith is our motivator. It tells you, get to work. There's something that needs to be done, and you are the person that has been chosen to do it. It can tell us what to do, it can tell us what the right thing is to do. And when faith is foremost, it does become the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Those women were there at a very dark moment in our collective Christian history, but they were also there for an uncertain moment. And that brings us to Easter. So notice that the only plan that these women had was to pay their last respects. That's all they wanted to do. But what they didn't expect when they got to the tomb was an angel to show up. Let's get to the food part. So this passage tells us that there was a violent earthquake when the angel came down and rolled away the stone. And the guards, who were basically the symbol of the power and authority of Rome, the unassailable Rome, mind you, passed out. Now, the women were scared too, don't get me wrong, but the reason they were able to handle it better than the guards were is because the angel spoke to them, told them that he knew why they were there, and then sent them on a mission. Basically, go back and tell the disciples. This helped them turn their fear outward instead of inward. When we become afraid, we have to remember that fear is actually not the enemy. Fear that we turn inward can harm us. It can distract us. It can make us more focused on ourselves than on our community around us or our relationship with God, and it can cripple us. Fear that is turned outward, that is the stuff that makes us want to protect others, that makes us want to know what the next step is. And because we are connected with our community that way, it brings us closer to God. Here's another thing. The Marys didn't just kind of go, oh, that's too bad. Jesus is dead. Time to go home. No, they actually got up and went to Jesus's tomb. They knew they had the power to do the right thing, so they did. And their faith told them what to do, just like me and that woman on that Sunday morning. They knew what the odds were, or they knew what the risks were, and they did it anyway. When we try to live Christ-like lives, it can become very difficult to figure out what the right thing is to do because there may be risks involved. Society may be telling us to do one thing even though we know that's not right. However, when we move towards that kind of life, that Christ-like life, we have to trust that our faith is going to lead us in the right direction. And it usually does. So the angel gave them two commands. It told them to see where Jesus was and then go and tell the disciples. Now, they weren't meant to stay long where they were. They were there to see what happened, to be a witness, and then just go. Later in the story, they run into Jesus himself, who basically confirms what they saw and gives them the additional instruction to, when they see the disciples, to tell them to go to Galilee. Now, I'm also going to note that modern translations say brothers and sisters, not just brothers. This isn't just, translators being woke. We know that there were women who followed Jesus as well. So the instruction was not just for the men. It was for everybody, everyone. Meet him in Galilee. Women weren't excluded. And let's think about that, speaking of which. God chose these women, these second-class citizens, to bring the gospel, the good news of the resurrection, to a group of men, mostly men, and some women who were in hiding. And it doesn't matter which translation you read, whether or not your translation says brothers or sisters and sisters, all of the translations basically say the same thing in the end. And that is the gospel was brought by women. So whenever somebody tries to tell you that women aren't supposed to preach, ask them, so what was Mary's role? And if they tell you, oh, she just spoke, she didn't preach. Really? Personally, I think that, kicking in the door and yelling, I have seen the risen Christ is a sermon. And here's one more thing to consider. When the disciples did hear the message, especially those men, it was a message that was meant expressly for them. Jesus didn't take them to task for, abandoning him. He didn't do anything like that. The message for them wasn't just, he is risen. It was, come anyway. We are all flawed human beings. We make mistakes. We are prone to think about ourselves before we think about others. And God knows all of that. Thank God that God knows all of that already. But Jesus doesn't care. In spite of our flaws, Jesus loves us anyway and wants us to come anyway. We are not chosen because we're perfect. We are chosen because of our faith. And it is our faith that sets us apart and lets God know that we're ready for whatever the challenge is. So when I helped that woman that Sunday morning, I will admit that part of the reason that I helped her is because I saw a little bit of myself in her. And I knew that if I didn't help her, I was forever going to have to live with the fact that I could have helped someone who looked like me, who could have been me in another time-space continuum, and didn't. But the other reason, I wasn't trying to make a statement when I helped her. The other reason was that, yes, I knew I was putting both of us at risk. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I just wanted to do what I felt God was leading me to do at the time. So I did it anyway. The Marys didn't go to make a political statement. That's not why they went to the tomb. They were going to mourn the loss of a loved one, just like anybody else would during that time period. They knew they were at risk. They knew the guards could turn them away if they were being nice, or do something worse if they decided not to be nice. But they went anyway. So, I'm going to close with this. Resurrection does not require your certainty. All it requires is your presence. And as you celebrate this Easter season, because yesterday was the first day of Easter and we got 40 days to go until Pentecost, as you are navigating these risks in your own life, or as you're weighing them against your own faith, and you're working towards your own personal resurrection in Christ Jesus, know that you're not going to have all the answers, but that's okay. Do it anyway. Cheers.